This is your time. I'm honored that you would come out and spend some time with me tonight. Linda gave my speech. What I do, especially with organizations like yourself, you don't need to listen to me talk for 20 or 25 minutes and then hope that you get a chance to ask some questions. This is your time. I would just as soon treat this as we would treat a town hall meeting. And you drive the entire agenda by asking me whatever questions you would like me to answer, talk about whatever topics you would like to talk about. It is your time, not my time. I want to work for you. I want the opportunity to be your U.S. Senator. With that, I did this in Congress. The best way to be your U.S. Senator and to be the best U.S. Senator that you could ever have is somebody that would actually just come to you and say, okay, what's on your mind? I'm going to start with your question. Do you want me to answer the question you asked me?
Yeah, answer that, please.
Okay. The question was, it was about the retirement system for members of Congress. And the question was, if you've served 2 years in Congress, does that mean that you can then retire with full income? And I would assume the other corollary to that would be, does that mean that you retire with full health care? And the answer is no. All right. The retirement package that Congress has was very similar to what I had at Herman Miller when I worked in the real economy. When I left Michigan, I spent 15 years at Herman Miller. I don't remember exactly what the percentage was, but for every year that I worked at Herman Miller, I got a certain percentage of my income that said, when you get to be a certain age, that's what you're going to be paid in retirement. And I think at Herman Miller, it was for every year I worked, I got like 1.5% of my income. In the federal government, it's basically 1.6% of your income for every year you serve up until 20. And then after 20 years, it accumulates at 1% after that. So I've got 18 years of service in. And if I took full retirement at 65, it means I would collect 18 times 1.6%. That retirement package is basically the same as every federal government employee receives. The post office might be a little bit different. The military might be a little bit different. But for those people that work in the Department of Education, that work in the Department of Energy, GSA, and those folks, they all would get basically exactly the same retirement.
Pete?
Yes.
Were you voted out? You ran against somebody and you lost an election and that's why you weren't a congressman?
And the question is, why did I leave? Why am I no longer a congressman? In 2010, I'd served 18 years in Congress. And I started this whole business by waking up one night in 1992 and in the spring of 1992 and rolling over to Diane in the middle of the night and saying, I'm going to run for Congress. And she said, go back to sleep and you'll feel better in the morning. I didn't feel any better. I ran against the chairman of the National Republican Campaign Committee. I beat him in a primary. In 2010, as Linda said, I had served on the Intelligence Committee for 10 years. The last 6.5 years, I was the lead Republican, meaning I was either the chairman of the committee or I was the lead Republican. I believe that it's absolutely the best job in Congress. There are, there's a call, the Gang of Eight. The Gang of Eight, 4 people in the House, the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader, the lead Republican, and the lead Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, the same 4 people in the Senate. They are told every secret dealing with national security that is out there. In 2010, I was term limited on the Intelligence Committee, and I said, you know what? Now is a good time to leave. I'm 55. There's no other job in Congress that matches the responsibility, the interest, the stimulation and the responsibility that I had on the Intelligence Committee. Now's a great time to leave. And I've had my opportunity to serve, to build up the seniority, to lead a committee. Now's a good time to go. So in 2010, I left Congress. We made that decision. A few months after I made that decision, Diane and I decided that we would take a run for governor. And then I lost the governor's race, the primary to Rick Snyder, the current governor. And so the last 15, 16 months I've been in the private sector. In the real economy again. Okay?
And Pete, showing my
Does this guy get all the questions?
I hate to show my ignorance, but
One last question, then we're going to go somewhere else. Make it good.
which senator are you running against?
Which senator am I running against?
Yeah, it's
Actually, I am not running against any senator. It's your seat. All right? She does not have, rights to this seat after January 3 noon of 2013. But I expect the Democrat that is going to be running against me, because she does not have primary opposition, I expect that I will be running against Debbie Stabenow.
okay.
All right? So,
Thanks.
yes. Yes, sir.
Pete, what's your opinion about the Keystone XL pipeline, oil pipeline?
The question is, what's my feeling on the Keystone Pipeline? In 2009, you may remember Nancy Pelosi turned off the lights on the House of Representatives just before we went into the August recess because we wanted to promote the all of the above strategy. So I stayed. I was one of the first people that stayed. I came back during August. I am for all of the above because I believe that where we are today, we have the opportunity to bring Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, and if we take the energy reserves of those three countries, North America can be energy independent. And that has a tremendous advantage for us in regards to economic security. Just think about it. Instead of sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Venezuela and to the Middle East, and we kept it here. I mean, communities like yours may talk about what happens if a tourist comes into town. If a tourist comes into town and spends $1, it's what the equivalent of that dollar goes through 5 businesses in your community. I think the same thing happens if we keep an energy dollar in the United States. If we pump a barrel of oil in North America, it's going to stay and go around North America 5 or 6 times. If it's gone, it's probably gone. I don't think Chavez is going to come back and spend a whole lot of money in the U.S. So I am for coal. All right, think about it. We have the largest reserves of coal in the world, and we have a president whose EPA 10 days ago issued preliminary restrictions or preliminary new rules on coal plants where, not me, but the head of the mining union said he is doing to miners, remember, not me, this is I'm assuming a Democrat union head, the miners, which are not typically friends of conservatives or Republicans, came out and said he's doing to the coal mining industry the same thing that he did to Osama bin Laden. Because under these new, remember, not me, because basically we will never build a new coal plant in the United States. On the way over today, if any of you are watching Fox today, but we were listening to it on the way over, not only is this administration and not only are environmentalists so against us building any coal plants, the mining companies are doing great. Why? Because they're exporting coal. Now they want to build a new coal port on the West Coast so that we can export coal. And the environmentalists are coming up and saying, no, we don't want to build a coal port because then someone else will build it. It's like we're going to shut down the coal plants or the coal electric plants in China. Okay, they're just going to buy it from somewhere else.
Pete, just one thought here. You're talking about it takes Canada, Mexico, and us to be energy sufficient. We can do it with our own oil and our own gas. We don't need Mexico. We don't need Canada. We've got enough.
Just let me finish, okay?
I just want you to know that. We have enough.
But the thing is, we've got coal, we don't have as much oil. We've got oil. We've got we now, with the new fracking, the new technology in natural gas, we've got over 100 years of natural gas. I mean, it was only that, it wasn't very long ago that, you know, we were looking at building natural gas LNG plants because we thought we were going to have to import coal, or excuse me, natural gas. We're now at a point where they want to build these LNG plants, liquefied natural gas. Why? Because we can export it. The bottom line is, if we use all of the resources that are available in North America, we can be energy independent, and you know that includes facilitating the delivery of oil, the tar sands, and those things from Canada into the U.S., down to Houston, down to the Gulf. Again, it's a huge economic boom. It should be built.
Just to follow, how does the EPA and Obama through executive order bypass the Congress that they can do this?
Well, no, the EPA has the rule. They're not bypassing Congress. What the EPA is doing. The EPA has the right to permit these kinds of structures, and you know, the bottom line on this is, as long as the president is president, it will not get built, because even if, you know, the Republicans now in Congress are promoting, you know, putting this into the highway bill, you know, that it's permitted and it can be built. What will happen on this is someone will then take that to court on environmental grounds, and what the president will do, he will instruct Eric Holder, don't defend the law in the courts. Right? This is the same thing that he's doing with the Defense of Marriage Act. Congress passed a law. George Bush signed it into law. I think it was Bush that signed it into law that said we will define marriages between a single man and a single woman. That is the law of the land. That law is now being challenged by different people across the country, and the president has instructed his Justice Department to not defend against the lawsuits. So John Boehner in the House of Representatives, they're going out and they're hiring legal counsel to defend the law of the land. But I would build it, you know, but as long as this president's president, it will not get built. Yes.
You know, the EPA seems to be like the biggest agency against freedom and people working in this country. And as you as a senator, what can you possibly do to control the beast?
You control the beast by taking the power away from the beast. All right? I mean, I saw it last night, and this is going to be a huge issue in Michigan over the next few months, maybe the next couple of years. Let me give you a couple of examples. By not making a long speech, I take a little bit of leeway in giving longer answers, okay? If that's all right. Okay. All right. You know, I watched the news, you know, we've got this new technology for natural gas. It's called fracking. You go way down, you pump a pipe. I'm a marketing guy, I'm not an engineer. They make a 90-degree turn a mile down or however far they go. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, and they put the pipe out, and, you know, that was the original thing. Now with fracking, what they do is they go into where they've drained all the gas or all the oil out, they go back in and they kind of blow it up down there, okay? Which then breaks up the shale and releases tremendous amounts of natural gas. Michigan sits on lots of natural gas. So I think the state's going to have an auction later this month for some of the property, and this was on our news, on the west side of the state in 4 counties, 22,000 acres. I don't know exactly what they're going to get per acre, but you know, the anti-fracking people are now coming out and saying, you know, this is terrible, you can't do it. It becomes a huge revenue flow to the state. Revenue to the state, it puts people to work, right?
Yeah.
It's not only people who drill it, you take a look at North Dakota, some of these states that have already committed to doing this.
I don't see the problem.
Yeah, well, who are committed, you know, their coffers are full. Okay, their unemployment rate is 3 to 4%, and you know, and they housing prices are going up. All the kinds of things that we would like to see in Michigan. There's jobs for their kids. now what's going to happen? Your question was, what can we do to the EPA? The EPA, Interior, and other federal agencies are trying to say we are going to establish federal standards for fracking. And the answer is no. This is Michigan. We will develop the standards for fracking in our state. Okay? Now, that can lead to very different conclusions. In Pennsylvania is experiencing a gas boom. You go right across the border into New York, they're not. Because they come out with really restrictive processes on fracking that the guys are saying, the people are just saying, great, we'll do it in Pennsylvania. We'll do it in other places. We'll go to Michigan. We'll go to people that permit it. Do it in Michigan. I'll give you one other example. Kennecott Mines. Michigan has always been has been a rich state in terms of natural resources. Kennecott Mines, they're looking to mine nickel. Nickel goes into the new batteries for the cars and these types of things. It is up near Marquette. Now, the mine is over here. They take the rock, they drive a long way, they bring it to a crusher. The crusher then begins the process for sorting the nickel out. Kennecott says, you know, if we've got a county road that would really make this a lot shorter, we will give you, the community, $100 million and we will pay for improving that road so it can carry our ore trucks. So it's paid for by the private sector. It is a county road. The county has approved it. The state has approved it. And you go, yes, it's investment, it's jobs for Michigan. It's a road. There's a road there already. The EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers have said, no. We're not sure about this. So the way you get the EPA out of it and say, I'm sorry, this is not, EPA doesn't have jurisdiction over this land. Don't you understand? This is a county road. This is a state road. This is not an EPA federal road. Michigan will determine whether Kennecott can mine, and we will determine where we're going to build our roads, and it's not the business of the EPA. So you have to take the power away from them. You have to go back in and just, it's good government, all right, because Kennecott, if we took the power away from them, Kennecott would know exactly who they had to go to. Say, okay, if Rick Snyder or if the state legislature doesn't like it, or all I have to do is find out whether they will approve it.
Another way is to take the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and then we got it.
Well, no, we still have to go through and pass the legislation that gets it out of their hands.
Right.
And you can do that with a lot of federal agencies. The other thing that happens when you do that is, guess what? You save money. All those EPA people that think that they can tell Michigan where to build roads, we don't need them anymore. They maybe have done a great job. We won't get into whether they're doing a great job or not. All we know is that they are duplicating the work of quality and talented people right here at the state level who know Michigan better than they do. These folks don't even know where Marquette is. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of good union members in this state who will blindly listen to their union leadership. What is your strategy to get them to listen to logic instead of their leadership?
Well, as Linda said, number one, how do you get the union folks to vote with them? Number one, what you do is you don't go out and stand in front of a group and just start bashing unions. All right? You go out and you say, I respect what you're doing, and we're going to present a case to you as to why you should vote for me, because this is the future that we see for Michigan. A couple of the folks that are running against me say, wow, Pete Hoekstra actually has a friendship with Jim Hoffa. My staff says, don't tell anybody that. All right? Well, as Linda mentioned, it's 1995, 1996. I'm enjoying my August recess in West Michigan. I bicycled my district every summer. I'm in Allegan County. Cell coverage isn't very good. I get a call from Gingrich, who's Speaker of the House. And Newt says, Pete, this afternoon, get to Grand Rapids. we're going to do a press conference. You're going to do a press conference, and you're going to announce that you're investigating the Teamsters. Remember, I've been in Congress 3 years. And I said, dude, I think we have a bad connection. I'll talk to you when I get back to Washington in September. He says, no, no, no. I hear you perfectly, and you hear me perfectly. You're going to Grand Rapids. So at that point in time, the Teamsters were a piggy bank for the Democratic National Committee. Ron Kerry was taking all the dues and all of this and basically just taking it and giving it to the Democratic National Committee, their fundraising arms. We went in, we did the investigation. There was a union election. Kerry won re-election. We continued the investigation. Ron Kerry was booted out. There was a rerun election. Jim Hoffa won the rerun. And rank and file Teamsters said, you know, Pete, you had the opportunity to do nothing but bash unions through your hearings. What you did is you bashed a corrupt leadership in the union, and you facilitated a process that gave the union back to its members. Okay? But then you start going out, how many union members in Michigan are happy right now? All right? They've got kids who are unemployed or underemployed. Okay? They may be worried about their jobs. They don't want to see taxes increase. And you go out and you ask them for their vote, and you tell them the policies that you are going to advocate for that we think will bring a better economic future to Michigan. For the union, like this union mine boss, all right? This guy should be standing next to Mitt Romney at the Democratic National Convention and saying, President Obama and his administration want to put all the union miners out of work. And when he stands up there, we ought to go, yes, we're glad you're with us because we want them to keep working. Okay? And, you got that. He's doing the same thing to the people in the oil business. He's doing the same thing. He's going to do the same thing to the people in the natural gas business. A lot of these are union workers. The people that make the pipes, that make the steel. These are union workers, and this president is going to put them out of work. And that you just have to lay out the reality for them, and some of them are not going to listen, and we're not going to get all of their votes. But with your help, there's probably some union members in here. Go back to the shop, go back to the plant, and talk to them about this. But you can't brand them all as being bad people. You treat them with dignity and respect, and you go in and you passionately ask for their vote. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. It was last week I saw a movie. It was a documentary. It's called They Come to America, and it was about illegal immigration. And at the crux of the problem is the fact that our borders are especially porous. They're coming in, the illegal aliens are coming in by the millions every single year, and they practically own the borders. And I would like to know, as a United States Senator, what would you do to close down the borders and make it really tough for illegal aliens to cross? And how do you differ on that issue as opposed to Debbie Stabenow? And how did she vote on things like that?
Well, I have voted to build more fencing along the border, to put more border guards along the border, and those types of things. Half the people in the country who are here illegally actually came here legally first. All right? And so just by number one is you do secure the border, but it is a very porous border. It's a long border with Mexico. It's an even longer, it's a long border with Canada. It's a tremendous amount of water, shoreline. But you do the best job that you can to secure the border. The second thing that you do is you go through a process of making sure that you start drying up the economic incentive for them to be here. And this is E-Verify, all right, where, you guys know what this is. You all know what this is. This is a little credit card, all right? It's very straightforward. When I was on the Intelligence Committee, I traveled all over the world. And, I'm in Pakistan. I'm in a market. you know, that you think, and you buy something and they say, oh yeah, you can use your credit card. And it's like, what? And you give them your credit card and they run it through, and just like doing it at your local gas station. This case, the guy came back and said, you know, sorry, it's not working. Okay, I didn't think it would. He says, give me another one. So I give him the other credit card. He says, okay, you're all set. And, you know, within the next 24 hours, Diane is home, and she gets a call from the credit card company that says, you know, is there any reason why your credit card should be used in Pakistan? And she says, if he's buying jewelry, it's okay. If he's buying another carpet, no. All right? And so, you know, why can't we have that very simple, that when you go in and you register, or you're applying for a job, that they just can't very quickly go to the Social Security database and verify that you are in the country legally and entitled to work.
For the same reason they want voter ID.
Yeah. The second thing is, that's two things. So you dry that up, the economic incentive. You know, I love Herman Cain. Okay? I don't know all of his personal background and all that. That's not my business. But I spent some time with Herman. He's going to come out with a 4-point plan on immigration, border security, but one of the other things that he has in place that I think is very, very smart. He would expand the number of visas that people would have to come do ag work and those types of things in the country. But when they come in, and he hasn't rolled it out yet because it isn't all fully worked out, but what he would do is he would say, okay, you're coming from Europe, you want to work here, you know, where you're going to have to pay a security bond to come into the country. Maybe $1,000. While you're here, 40% of your wages, you're going to collect 60% of your wages. 40% of your wages are going to go into another category. You know, they're going to be paid to the government. When you leave, you will get maybe half of the 40% back. When you leave, when you exit the country, you'll get half of it back, and the other half will pay for the products and services that you received from the federal government while you were here. You know, this is the kind of creative. It's not like I said. What's that?
That's terrible.
What's that? Why is that?
Pay for your services as you get them.
No. This is driving on our highways. All the service, if they've accessed Medicare,
Won't they be paying income tax?
Well,
that's part of it. Yeah.
But right now, what a lot of them do, they don't pay anything.
Well,
But, you know, like I
that's
said,
our fault.
he's working through this process now, and maybe it's paid income tax. Maybe we'll get more than what they pay in income tax. But yes. But those are the kinds of things that we can do that will decrease illegal immigration and, you know, create an environment. If you're going to come here and you're going to work here, we're going to be able to identify it. We're going to give you an incentive to, while you're here, to leave. Thank you. And think about, you know, have them pay income tax. What if they leave in November? How are we going to go after them if they are back in Venezuela, back in South America, back in Africa, or whatever, and go after them and say, oh, by the way, now you have to file your income tax.
Most employees pay it every paycheck. They take it out of your check.
And they're here. I don't want to, but I'm just saying to make them pay income tax is, you know, remember, we all file withholding. Some of us, at the end of the year, find out we have to pay in. Others have to pay in. But the bottom line is there are ways that we can control this and grow our economy. Yes?
Just 1 minute.
Why is the Republicans holding up E-Verify, particularly Representative Camp?
I didn't know Camp was.
I understand that he is the sole Republican holding up E-Verify from being initialized.
I don't know. That's
Camp, yes.
I didn't know that Dave was holding that up. That's a discussion to have with Dave.
I was just wondering if you were-
I was not aware of that. I wouldn't know why Dave would be holding it up.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Back to the border, I got a less creative plan. I have a one-step plan. Why can we not enforce existing laws. And let me go back to before where you were speaking of the EPA and the NLRB and et cetera, Department of Energy. You're talking about going through Congress and making legislation and taking powers away from them. In the Constitution, I don't see where they ever got the powers to begin with. Could you possibly explain where they got the powers that they used to?
Well, I'm not going to defend how they got them, all right? But they have now been enshrined, okay? And so, the only way that you're going to get rid of them, the way to get rid of them is, if you believe that they're unconstitutional, is to go to the courts. I would think that many of those agencies have already been challenged in the courts, and the rulings that they have made have said that what the federal government is doing through those agencies is constitutional. So the only way that you roll them back now is, don't yell at me, elect somebody to go over there and roll them back. Because if you're convinced that they're unconstitutional, you have the legal, regress to go challenge that in the courts again. I'm just telling you, you're going to lose. That may not be good news, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you, hey man, I think you ought to go challenge them in the courts and I think you're going to win. I think you'll spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and at the end of that process, you will lose. So the only thing you need to do now is, what you need to do now is you need to roll them back. In some cases, you may eliminate them, and you need to put them in a much tighter box. You brought up the National Labor Relations Board. Okay? I mean, what the National Labor Relations Board is doing right now, with going after U.S. companies for picking out for picking out companies and going after them because they're moving into a right-to-work state versus something else, and then putting them under a microscope and trying to challenge them through the courts and through the bureaucratic process is unbelievable. Oh, you're going to, okay, yeah. All right, good. I think, this guy's going to have a really good question for it. He wants to be up close and personal. Yeah, okay.
Debbie and our wonderful Congressman Dingell had a lot to do with this Medicaid thing, or not Medicaid thing, but this new
Obamacare.
I think it's an abomination, of course, but how is that selling? Is that going to sell to the population that they're because we don't even know what's in it yet.
No, you're finding out more every day.
We are.
The question is, how is Obamacare selling? I think, number one, thanks to a lot of groups like you around the country, this thing ran into a tremendous amount of trouble just getting passed. Barely passing in the House and barely passing in the U.S. Senate. I think they thought that they would just roll over everybody, and they didn't. You guys stretched it out. I still remember going up to Marquette, and because Bart Stupak wouldn't go up there for a town hall meeting, so they called me and said, "Hey, will you come up and do a town hall meeting?" I said, "Sure." And I think we had 400 or 500 people show up, but it was driven by Tea Party organizations throughout northern Michigan and the UP saying, we don't want this thing. You guys had massive rallies on the lawn of the Capitol and these types of things. So number one, you raised lots of questions beforehand. The second thing is afterwards, and this is what you need to exactly do once you elect a new president and a new senator and a new Congress in November. You kept their feet to the fire. You didn't, the day it passed, you didn't pack up and go home and say, we lost, what's the next battle? You stayed engaged, and you held people accountable. It's why Bart Stupak is no longer the congressman from the UP and Dan Benishek is, because you held Bart Stupak accountable because he said, I'm not going to vote for this unless it's pro-life, and put some restrictions in. Then he ended up voting for it, and it wasn't. Okay? But you held him accountable. And I think right now the approval ratings on Obamacare are under 40%. Okay? So, and again, it's because of organizations like yourself. You have stayed involved in the process. You didn't leave. You haven't given up. And you are saying, where did my friend go? Who just asked me the question about healthcare, or about EPA and those types of things. What happened on a lot of these other agencies when they got created, people walked away and said, oh, that's a done deal. That's not happening on Obamacare. You're saying, no, we're not giving up on this, and we're not going to give up we're not going to stop until we beat it. This will be probably the biggest and the first time that we've significantly rolled back the federal government in trying to intrude on individual states' rights in the history of the country. And it's because people like yourselves have stayed involved. I'm sorry. Okay.
We haven't had a budget in, what, 3 years?
Yep.
So, and, God, anyhow, we don't have a Republican president, but we do have both houses, but not
No, we don't.
veto-proof.
Nobody said if we do.
But we don't have a veto-proof or a veto-proof majority. What would you do to leverage that president to the point where he's so uncomfortable that he has to sign the budget?
Well,
We do have to change this.
I know. I've been through this. In 1993, 1994, it was miserable being a Republican conservative member of Congress because every day you walked from the Capitol and you walked back to your office and you put your arm around your friend and say, we lost again. A couple of times we won. Remember, Clinton wanted to do a carbon tax, okay? Which is really no different than cap and trade or what this president is trying to do. He wanted to do national health care, all right? And he did a stimulus bill. He got his stimulus bill, but the other two he didn't get. But in 1994, again, the people stood up and they said, we're going to elect new people who are going to rein this president in. So in 1995, we had a new House and a new Senate. And we had a president that was willing to compromise. All right?
This guy's not.
He did. We reformed welfare. We sent it to his desk 3 times, but finally the 3rd time he signed it. We cut taxes. We restrained spending. We didn't cut. We slowed the growth. We ended up balancing the budget 4 years in a row because Bill Clinton was willing to work with Republicans in Congress. This guy, people say it'd be great if we had a new House and a new Senate, or excuse me, kept the House and got a Senate, and that might be more important than winning the White House. I'm not sure, okay? Because I believe what this president has done with where he's taken the National Labor Relations Board, what he's doing with EPA, what he's doing with all these emissions, he's by fiat, he's going to do he's doing cap and trade. When he comes out with new rules and regulations on emissions from coal plants that says there'll be no new coal plants done, I'm sorry, he's just accomplished cap and trade. All right? When he goes through and he gets, GM and Chrysler standing behind him saying, yeah, we'll take increased mileage as much, whatever you want. Now, of course they're going to say that. We own them. Okay? He's implementing cap and trade. When he goes after Boeing through the NLRB, what's he doing? He's doing card check and all the pro-union type of stuff with nothing done by Congress. Yep. And so I'm more worried about what this guy will do by fiat, especially when he's not restrained by getting reelected. Mm-hmm. John Boehner said today, I don't know if our economy can survive 4 more years of President Obama. I think I tend to agree.
Boehner needs a backbone.
I think
tend to agree?
Yeah. I think the other thing that, when he says to the Russian president, I'll have more flexibility after the election.
Yeah, more flexibility
Don't
in
you believe that
Chicago.
he's got that same attitude to a whole bunch of the stuff that he's looking at that he'd like to do domestically? I mean, EPA put off fracking regulations until 2015. You know what? If he's reelected, my bet is they will have fracking regulations out in 2013 that will basically kill fracking because they don't like any fuel that burns. I don't laugh, it's true! Okay?
That's what fuels America.
What's that?
That's what fuels America.
Yeah. And the amazing thing, all the rest of the world is doing it. They are burning coal, they are picking up our fracking technology, they're doing natural gas, they're drilling for petroleum. We help Brazil drill for petroleum in the water, and we won't let them do it here in the U.S. This, you know,
It's nuts.
The oil rigs have moved to south.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they
we are, and, you know,
can't drill.
we are empowering those who want to compete with us, and perhaps those who want to defeat us militarily. We are putting America at risk. We've already seen we're putting our kids' future at risk. That kid right over there.
In terms of, from a fiscal conservative aspect, how do you find, what's your solution in terms of federal spending? In terms of curtailing it, is it returning to a gold standard, limiting to like a percentage of GDP? Is it reforming social entitlements?
I am for you. There's a couple of basics. The question is, how do you get to balancing and starting paying down the debt? The formula is very similar to what we did in the mid-90s, except the problem's now bigger. All right? You have to reform Social Security and Medicare. Okay? I mean, you can, I mean, the Social Security, the actuaries came out this week. Social Security runs out of money 2035, but we're already paying Social Security out of general fund. And that's the same thing with Medicare. I think Medicare, you know, I think the person who heads up Medicare said, wow, it's solvent until 2024. I'm sorry, that's only 12 years. That's not all that long. So you have to reform Social Security and Medicare. So you have to do entitlements. You have to do, I think you have to fundamentally, we restrained spending in the 90s, we now need to cut spending. All right? And, you know, we have to convince, we have to talk this story with the American people because they have all gone through it. When I was at Herman Miller, the real economy, we ran into some times where, you know, times got tough. And we spent money on it. We all, and you know, salespeople drove our volume. You know, if they don't sell, we don't make stuff. And so at the end of every year, we'd have a big national sales meeting. They'd have a big expensive dinner at the end of it and all of that. And we'd recognize the performance of our salespeople. Guess what? When times got tough, the sales meeting went away. And they were still happy. They were still outperforming. We found, I was vice president of marketing. You know, people would come to me and say, Pete, you've got to cut your budget. You're going to get less. You're actually going to get less money than you did last year. And then they didn't say, and by the way, you can do less, and you know, we expect a lower quality of service to our customers and all of that. No, they would say, by the way, you're going to get less. You just got to find out a way to do more with less. So you'd start getting creative. We can do the same thing with GSA. Did not have to have an $800,000 party in Las Vegas in 2010 as the budget was going down, you know, was just being blown out. Okay, they could have done it differently, and you know, they could have saved $700,000. Maybe could have saved all $800,000. That's just an example. So you have to cut spending.
Do you see a specific cut or specific
Sure.
outlet?
Yeah,
Where's our biggest opportunity to save that deficit?
Well, I gave you one. You're going to get a tremendous amount of savings out of doing entitlements. Then you take a look at discretionary spending. I gave you one. If we tell people this chunk of land is going to be managed by the state and not by the EPA, the state's going to save money, the federal government's going to save money, and guess what? The environment's not going to be hurt. Give you another one. Education. Why do we have a Department of Education that is coming out with rules and regulations? I voted against No Child Left Behind. I was one of only 20 Republicans who voted against a Republican president, his signature program in 2001, 3 months after 9/11, on what, with a president whose popularity ratings were at 90%. I said no. 10 years later, everybody now is basically saying this is a bad idea. Why? Because the federal, as a congressman, I'd go to a lot of schools and I would meet with their students and talk to them about government. And all of a sudden in 2004, 2005, 4 or 5 years after No Child Left Behind, I would go in and the government teacher that had always had the kids well prepared and all of this was no longer there. So I'd say, hey, what happened? Did Jack retire? And they said, no, under No Child Left Behind, Jack was not fully qualified to teach government. Because, the federal government came out with rules and regulations and saying, this is what Jack has to have done. We don't know who Jack is, but if he hasn't checked every box, he cannot teach government. He can't teach science, or he can't teach math. Okay? My kids went to parochial school. Okay? As going to a Christian school, we believed that every teacher was highly qualified. But we knew better. But since we knew that every teacher, and we believed that every teacher was highly qualified, it meant that we couldn't say, Brian's going into 7th grade and we'd really like him to have Betty teaching math. All right? Because we thought Betty was a better teacher than Gary. Okay? We knew it because we talked to the parents who had kids in 7th grade the year before. And we knew Betty was great and Gary was awful. But we couldn't do that in our school system because they were all good. So what we would do is we would write a letter to the school and we would say, Brian really has problems in the classes that are being taught by 40-year-old males who are, whatever. That would be our way to get around it. All kids are, we'd say the problem is Brian. He really needs to have Betty. Okay? But we wouldn't say we want him to have Betty because Betty's a... Why does the government have regulations to tell us who's a good teacher, who's a bad teacher? We all can figure that out for ourselves. We don't need the government to do that. A school board should be able to decide who's highly qualified, who's not. No Child Left Behind can go away, and I think the quality of our education will go up. We will save money. Highways. Okay? We pay federal highway tax. It goes to Washington. One day I'm driving up between Muskegon and Montague, and it goes through a long marsh, wetlands. Okay? We have potholes. Right? Michigan has potholes. And so one day I'm riding along this highway, and they're building a fence about that high for about 1.5 miles. Hey, and you call your district guy and say, hey, call MDOT. What's this fence for? Calls them, they come back. It's a turtle fence. Some of you may remember. We built a turtle fence. I like turtles. Okay? I don't know. Is my Democrat follower here tonight? Where do you put this video anyway?
They're giving us a copy of the video.
No, but I mean, what do you guys do with it?
YouTube.
Oh, okay. I mean, but just before I, get myself into real trouble, okay, I'll get out of sight of the camera. Can you guys take a joke? Yeah. When you hear this, and so they said, well, hey, Pete was just trying to be funny, but when someone tries to make a big deal out of this, you could say, come on, guys, lighten up. in the right circumstances, turtles help fill potholes. Okay? All right? But no, I mean, but we're spending all of this money to build a turtle fence when MDOT has all of these roads and bridges that we got to repair. Leave the money in the state. We downsize the Department of Transportation. We don't have to follow their rules and regulations. Our folks in Lansing can decide where we're going to build it, how we're going to build it, and all of these types of things. So you got all of those types of things going. The last thing that I'll just talk about on balancing the budget. Entitlements, cost cutting, economic growth. The way that we have to grow ourselves out of this hole. Yep. We've got to do these other things. Think about it. We talked about it again. These things are connected. If we put the coal industry out of business, that's hundreds of thousands of jobs that are gone. If we allow that industry to grow, that's hundreds of thousands of people who are going to work. And when they work, they pay taxes. When we build a Keystone pipeline, we put lots of people to work. We put people to work to build the pipes, to dig the trench, to pump the oil, to get it down, and we are the best refiners of oil into other products. We put lots of people to work. When we drill for natural gas, instead of importing natural gas, we export it. Okay? That puts people to work. So we put together pro-growth policies. We reform an antiquated tax code so that it becomes a pro-growth tax code. And instead of celebrating, think about this. America is happy because unemployment is 8.5%.
Still higher than it was 4 years ago.
And it's higher than it was 4 years ago, but we're thinking, wow, we're down to 8.5. Hallelujah. This is not good. Talk to young people. Talk to people our age. How many of us really believe that that's a good number? How many people don't have anxieties about their job, their kids getting good, high-quality paying jobs? Okay? That people our age are in fear of losing their jobs? Seniors are worried because they're not getting any return on their investments. Most of us have seen the equity in our homes wiped out. All of these types of things. Put people back to work and we can grow ourselves out. And when people are back to work, guess who benefits?
Everybody.
Everybody, including the government.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Which one? Who'd you point out? Right there. Okay.
What can be done to make the public aware of the corruption within the Obama administration? You mentioned the investment that they made in the Brazilian oil fields. Well, there's another one that I came up with recently where there's a military aircraft that was bid on by American companies, and it is being built by a company called Embraer in Brazil. And both the oil company and the aircraft company are places in which George Soros has considerable investment.
Huh. Yeah, I mean,
Go figure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the beauty of, number one, there's very little unbiased investigative reporting going on today, and that's a problem, I think. Okay? I think, I may not have agreed with the media all the time, but you used to have, you used to have editors at newspapers, and they had the resources. They could go out and do investigative reporting. They could tell these stories. Now you go on the internet, and you got these bloggers writing all kinds of stuff that you don't know whether it's true or not. And they go out and say anything that they want. We've got to be very, very good at identifying those and clearly articulating those messages out to the public. It's a communications war. Okay, I mean, there's so many examples. I mean, the president is going out today. He went to today and tomorrow, or whatever. He's going to 3 different states and he's talking to college students. Okay, and what he's doing is saying, Congress has to keep your interest rates at half of what they should be. Well, hey, if you're a college student, you're deeply in debt, you might think that's a great idea. Mitt said, I'm for it. Okay? But what we should be talking about is my daughter's getting an MBA from Notre Dame right now. All right? A couple of things. Number one, she worked for 5 years. She ate beans and rice 3 or 4 times a week so that she could save money for when she went to college, for when she got her MBA. She's still going to come out of there with some debt. But you know what? She wouldn't be worried about her debt if she had a high degree of confidence that when she got out, there was going to be a job for her. The problem, a lot of these kids would be these are good kids, all right? They wanted to get a great education. The problem is the issue here is not whether the government should subsidize or not. The issue here is what are we going to do to get this economy moving? Because if these kids had the kind of jobs that they've developed, the skills and the talents and what we've trained them for, the debt wouldn't be as big of an issue. They'd say, fine, I'm going to work, I'm going to make my $35,000, $40,000 a year or whatever. I'll be able to pay off this debt and move on. But when you come out of college and you've got $30,000 worth of debt and the only job that you can get is being a waiter or a waitress and you're still living at home with mom and dad, guess what? It's not the future that they envisioned, and it's not the future we envisioned. I mean, I love my kids, but they're 30, 27, and 24. Last August, we were almost to the point where all 3 of them were going to be back home. And Diane and I are looking at each other and saying, we thought we were going to be empty nesters, all right? And and they work hard and they are great kids, but the opportunities aren't out there for them. So, way in the back.
Yes, sir. I bought and sold used industrial machinery for 38 years. I watched our country get destroyed. What do you see? What can you do as a U.S. Senator to help Americans find jobs in factories?
A couple of what can we do to help America? We need to recognize that each and every day we've got to compete with the rest of the world for jobs. Companies aren't just going to locate jobs here because we love America. We've got to be competitive so that they get the best return, and that doesn't mean lowest wages. We've got a lot of things going for us in America. What do you need to do? You need to adjust the tax code. All right? The tax code, it's horrendous. You can't understand it. Like I said, I have supported 999. I cringed at the debates when the other Republican candidates went after Herman Cain for 999. Because there is no tax plan that is perfect. Okay? They all are going to have weaknesses. But at least Herman had the courage to go out and say, I think this is better than what we have. And if you take a look at it, 999 is very similar to what we have in Michigan. We've got a sales tax, a flat income tax, and we just got rid of the worst business tax in the country, and we did basically a flat corporate tax. And so, you reform the tax code, you reform labor law, again, this whole thing, National Labor Relations Board. What is Boeing going to do, or any other large company going to do the next time they say, we've got to build more capacity? Remember, Boeing was not moving capacity from Washington down south. They were adding capacity. They were adding. And our government went to them and said, we're going to take you to court because we think you may be moving here because it's a right-to-work state. It's kind of like, that's what federalism is. That South and North Carolina and Georgia will compete with states like Michigan and Washington and Ohio and Illinois, and if they come up with a better plan than what we have, jobs are going to go there, and the federal government shouldn't get in their way and say, we're going to go after you because we think you made the wrong decision. The next time a major company like that finds out that maybe the state of Washington isn't competitive and they'd like to keep the jobs in America, but they believe that their own government may come after them, what will they do? They will go somewhere else where they can't be where they can't be under the reach of the federal government. And so we've got a great infrastructure system. We have got talented workers. We've got a stable political environment. We've got a relative, it needs to be stronger and it's weaker. And what, this president is doing with our deficits, he's weakening the dollar. We have the rule of law. We have lots of things here that manufacturers and businesses appreciate and can't get in a lot of other places in the country, in the world, that give us a competitive advantage. But if we do a bunch of things wrong, Michigan's going to have the opportunity, I think, in November to vote on whether we are going to require 25% of our energy, of our electricity, to be produced by clean energy. No, it's true.
Well, I know.
Okay, it's not baloney. I'm not kidding you. We may have the opportunity to vote on that.
Vote no.
What do you, but this is, again, if Michigan wants to do that, but think about if you've got to get if Michigan has to produce 25% of its energy from wind or solar, do you think your energy or your electric rates are going to go up or down?
Up.
They're going to go up. We have lots of businesses in Michigan that are energy intensive. And if this becomes the law of the state, the requirement of the state, do we believe that Michigan will be a more or less attractive place to do business?
Less.
It will be less. Salazar, I think today, and I don't know the exact specifics of it, but I think he's asking for a national renewable standard so that we are all equally disadvantaged. Okay? Versus the rest of the world. But if our gas prices 10 years ago were like $14 per 1,000 BTUs or million BTUs, that price is now $1.96. Okay? That can fuel all kinds of things. It can be turned into methanol. We can burn it in our cars. Okay? It can be used, natural gas is the feedstock into the building blocks for plastic. Dow just announced that they're building a $5 billion plant down in Texas to take natural gas and to turn it into whatever Dow makes. Okay? If we put in restrictions that raise the cost of natural gas again, what happens? Dow may come back and say, maybe we'll just kind of wait with that and maybe we'll build it in the Middle East. This is not brain surgery. Okay? This is basic economics. You cannot roll back the laws of basic economics. If I want you to create jobs in Michigan or the United States, I have to make this one of the best places for you to do business. And if I'm going to make your life miserable, eventually you will pack up and leave. Which is what we've seen in Michigan up until the last 2 years. I think the last year, hallelujah, we've had as many people moving into Michigan as have moved out. All right, so we're now at level. But for 10 years, we basically saw more people leaving Michigan than coming in. And it's not because we're a terrible state. We just did dumb things.
Time for two more.
Two more, yeah.
We'll go on this side. There's the gentleman here with the glasses, and then the gentleman behind him.
I don't want one from the guy behind him. You know who that is. Yeah, we'll go, yeah. All right.
The right to work legislation that's running through
Yep.
the various Congresses now in various states.
Yep.
Would give the union workers their right to reclaim control of their unions.
Yep.
Should it be done at the state level or should it be done at the federal level?
Well, I mean, my belief is it needs to be done at the state level. All right. I mean, if we are for federalism, let's not just take the issues where we have a preference. Okay. I think it should be at the state level. If Michigan wants to be right to work, which I think we're on our way to doing that now because of some of the things that the unions are doing, that we're going to have an opportunity to vote on that, and I'll vote for it. Okay, but I would make it a state level. The second thing is, and some people have hammered and said, "People, you haven't been all that big on right to work." Well, I have been in Washington where they were a couple of votes away from passing card check. All right, which means that instead of having a secret ballot as to whether your place of employment is going to be union or not, it's not going to be secret ballot. I'm going to go to you and say, hey, here's your ballot. What? No. Fill it out right now and give it back to me so I can see how you're going to vote. That is how, and that just breeds all kinds of corruption. And I fought prevailing wage consistently. I fought I don't know, but you got all this stuff in Washington. We on all of those votes, we'd always lose 40 or 50 Republicans, even when we had the majority. Okay, if you want it done at the federal level, you're going to wait a long time. Okay, I think in Michigan, you've got a legislature, you've got the referendum process, and these types of things. I think I believe it's appropriate. Just like I want environmental stuff, I want those to be done at the state level. I want transportation dollars at the state level. I want education decided at the state level. Labor rules and these types of things, I think the best place to do right to work is at state level, and it's consistent with the other things that I'm talking about. Don.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete, so much for coming here, and I want to thank you also personally for helping me in 2010 and showing me through Washington and getting me to where I need to go with the NRCC and all that good stuff. But we have a debt of 15.5 and obviously going out of control. And everyone in this room here, if we were going through some kind of financial difficulty, no matter what the reason would be, we would look at our own house, our own budget. We decide, what we would have to have, what we would like to have, and what we could live without. Obviously, our children and grandchildren are in big trouble here. Will you help as a statesman? I understand you know how the sausage is made, to go ahead and clean up your house, the U.S. House itself, and how they do business. Because we have numbers like, for instance, Human Health and Services, $910 billion annually. Department of Education, $79 billion annually, and this just keeps on going and going. I mean, we got a department for wild horses and donkeys at $75 million. Yep. There's plenty of waste there, and I think everyone in this room will agree that this isn't that this is a spending problem.
Yeah.
Not a revenue problem. So would you help to fight this, to get this back into a certain percentage of GDP? And the second question, what is your plan for federal tax reform?
That's exactly what we did in the 90s under Kasich when I was on the budget committee. We passed the budget every year that I was on the budget committee. We followed the budget, we balanced the budget. And as I said earlier to the question back there, this is more than just restraining spending. We have to cut spending. Okay? On tax reform, absolutely. I think you need to get back to a balance, and then you need to start paying down the debt. The second thing on tax reform is I have endorsed 999, okay? I have endorsed the flat tax, and I've endorsed the fair tax. And so the question may be, Pete, can't you make up your mind? All right? And the answer is, if I'm the 51st vote in the U.S. Senate, and any one of those three comes in front of me to be the law of the land on tax reform, I will vote for it because it will be dramatically better, simpler, and pro-growth than what we have today. Okay? And, because the thing, what you'll find is that right now in the House and the Senate, you probably got, in the Senate, you probably got, let's say you got 48 people who are for the status quo, tweaking the current tax system. And then the rest of us, the other 52 of us, are divided, and there's 17 in favor of the flat tax, there's 18 in favor of the fair tax, and then there's 17 in favor of 999. Guess who wins? The 48. And all I'm saying is at that point in time, I will do everything I can to bring the 17, the 18, and the 17 together to have fundamental tax reform. And it's not like I'm not going to stand in the corner and say, nope, only 999. And if we, I'm just saying, if the other 51 people get to some modification of those three coming together, I'm not going to sit there in the corner and say, no, unless I get everything I want. If it's movement, fundamental movement in the right direction, any one of those three works for me.
As a senator, though, you'd be able to, I mean, you determine the budget itself as far as the money and does it make sense? Would you be willing to say, okay, we're going to pass something that says, okay, we're not going to go past, say, 18% of GDP and keep that as that?
Well, no, I think, yeah, I mean, I think where you start is, I think this year will be at somewhere around 24% of GDP. My preference would be nothing more than 18. And I think once you get to 18%, you cap that as the top, and then you start taking a look and seeing whether you can go lower. But I mean, the bottom line is, you know, it's just to get back to 18 is going to be really, really tough because all this, you know, the rhetoric will be, and you're going to hear it, and you're hearing it from the president already. They're cutting medical research. You know, we're going to, you know, they're cutting cancer research. They're cutting research on juvenile diabetes. They're cutting, you know, on breast cancer and all of the, you know, those terrible Republicans. And number one is they're going to come off the inflated numbers that this president has put in place in the last 3 or 4 years. Okay, that's their baseline. You know, you can cut it significantly and get back to what we were spending on these things in 2008 and 2009. It was plenty. You can always say, sure, I'd like to spend a little bit more money on those. But you know, the good thing that Mitt said today about the student loans, okay, and it didn't get much coverage. The president just wants to pay for the student loans and add it to the deficit. Mitt did the right thing. It said, if you're going to do if you want to cut the student loan thing in half, the rate in half, there's going to be a cost to the American taxpayer. And if you want to do that, then you've got to cut somewhere else. And I'll tell you, the one thing that they have to do is they have to cut in the same year. Okay? All right?
Thank you.
Okay? Because, like you said, I know how it works. And, you know, what happened with some of the stuff last year where they increased spending, they then said, and we're going to do this cut. You know, we're going to cut $1 billion in this area. And you said, great. We're spending $1 billion more here this year, and we're going to cut $1 billion over here, and then you kind of peel it back, and the $1 billion over here is we're going to cut $100 million for each of the next 10 years. All right, and you know, you can't do that. Well, you can, but you shouldn't. All right, you guys have been very, very generous with your time. Oh,
one more question, then we're done.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Hoekstra, let's switch gears to national security. Yesterday it was announced by the higher-in-chief that the war on terrorism is all over with. And he had the Muslim Brotherhood in the White House 2 weeks ago, and now I understand he has a program to help small businesses, and that'll be going through some part or some facility having to do with the Muslim Brotherhood. What do you know, and what are your feelings on this?
Well, the nice thing is I'm glad the war on terrorism is over, because for the first year of his administration, he wouldn't acknowledge that there was a war on terrorism, that we weren't involved. I'm trying to remember what his Napolitano said. What did you call it?
Man-made disaster.
Man-made disaster, yeah. All right, and you know, Hassan at Fort Hood is still, they've never called this an act of terrorism, the killing of the couple of recruiters in Arkansas, you know, that was never an act of terrorism. Number one, the war is not over. Okay, it is a deadly threat that continues to spread. It's now going into northern Africa and those types of things. You know, there's a lot of different opinions on what the Arab Spring, but you know, when the president, I mean, I'm glad you asked. This president, you know, they say this is his strong suit, and maybe it is compared to the economy. All right, I may give him that. All right, but I mean, it's June or July of 2009. The people are in the streets. They're going against the mullahs and Ahmadinejad in Iran, and he sides with the government of Iran.
Well, he's a Muslim.
He is in, the people are protesting in the streets against Mubarak, and within 2 weeks he throws Mubarak under the bus. There's something wrong with that picture. Mubarak, I'm not saying Mubarak's perfect, but he sure is better than the ruling regime in Iran. And for 30 years he honored the peace treaty with Israel and kept the Sinai, Muslim Brotherhood, and Al-Qaeda free. Okay? But he threw him under the bus. Gaddafi was helping us. Gaddafi is a far from perfect individual, but at the time we threw him under the bus, he was helping us against radical jihadists in northern Africa. In each of these countries, I don't know what the short-term future is going to be, but I'm concerned about what it's going to be. Okay? I think that, Israel's going to be much less safe and secure. You're going to have the Muslim Brotherhood and other extremist groups are going to play a bigger role in Egypt than what they did before. You take a look at the founding tenets of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's still part of their doctrine today. It is Sharia, okay, and these types of things. These are people who want to eliminate our way of life. And if you've got any questions about that, ask the Coptic Christians in Egypt. Ask the Chaldeans, the Chaldean Christians in Iraq. The Jews and the Christians in Iran, in Turkey. When these regimes come into play, these become hostile environments to people of faith, different than the Muslim community. And Obama has never talked about this stuff. And I've met with the Coptics, I've met with the Chaldeans, and these new regimes are awful. These people are a threat to the U.S. mainland, our U.S. government, to U.S. citizens, and for the U.S. government to be engaged and recognized and work with the Muslim Brotherhood. We shouldn't be. These are not our friends. I'm sorry. These are people that these are people we really need to be concerned about. Okay.
But Debbie votes with him 95% of the time.
I couldn't think of 5% when she doesn't, but okay. But if you want to give her that compliment that she only votes with him 95% of the time, you can vote.
Well, my point is,
yeah.
she is in his back pocket, just like Sander and Carl Levin.
Yeah. Let me just wrap up. Okay, a couple minutes. Beating Sander Levin. Absolutely essential. How many of you know of the Mackinac Center? Yes. All right. Sander Levin, in the last few days, released a letter that he sent to the IRS, asking the IRS to investigate the Mackinac Center, that they're violating their tax-free or tax-exempt status. This is nothing but a Democratic attempt to kind of shut down a voice of restrained conservative government. All right, so just be aware that's what this congressman is doing, and he's the ranking Democrat on the Ways and Means Committee, asking, think about it. He's asking the IRS to go investigate his constituents. Okay. The second thing is the president and Debbie are very, very beatable. Michigan's going to be crucial in terms of winning the election. If we can turn this state out for Mitt, and Mitt wins Michigan, he probably wins the presidency. If you elect me to be your next senator, there will be 51 Republican senators. There'll be at least 51. I can't promise you there'll be 51 conservative Republican senators, but we will at least have the majority, and we will be able to set the agenda. You guys, I think. You guys have been very effective in the types of things that you've done over the last number of years. We need your help on November, leading up to November. I very much appreciate your help and support. I'm asking for your help and support, boots on the street and those kinds of things to make this happen. And then the thing that you need to do when you elect me as your next U.S. Senator is to hold my feet to the fire just the same way that you held Obama's feet to the fire and the Democrats' feet to the fire after they passed Obamacare I'm more than willing to have you do that, and I'm more than willing to continue the dialogue that we started tonight, that we've done over the past few years since I've been over here and running statewide. I think you can tell that I'm not afraid to engage people in a dialogue, whether I agree with them or not. I think we are both better off because of the discussion that we have, so that we can move, because I think ultimately we may not agree on all of the tactics and those types of things, but on the America that we want, strong domestically, thank you for bringing up the question, strong internationally, we are fundamentally in agreement as to where we want to go. We can make this happen, and with your help, we will.
Okay,
all
so
right? What's that?
How do you get rid of the bugged voting machines? How can you beat the Obama if the machines are rigged?
Well, this is where, this is our response. Elections are the responsibility of the state. They are not federal elections. You elect electors, you elect senators, they're run by the state.
But didn't Obama select a company in Spain that builds the machines? Isn't that where his wife goes for vacations?
But I mean, the machines,
Put two together.
yeah, the machines that Michigan uses are a decision of the legislature, the Secretary of State, and the governor. Now, the federal government may bribe us to use those machines, by paying for them and those types of things, but it is the responsibility of Ruth Johnson, the responsibility of the legislature, and the responsibility of this governor to make sure that we have free and corruption-free elections. And Republicans have all of the levers of power in this state. If we have an unfair election, we have no one to blame but the Republicans in power in Lansing. Okay? Yep. I think, yeah. Okay, great.